Welcome to a live edition of Municipal Affairs. Over the course of the next 45 minutes, we'll be discussing one topic that has sent shockwaves through the municipal sector here in the province of Alberta. Bill 20, or as it's called, the Municipal Affairs Statutes Amendment Act of 2024. Joining us to dissect the bill is Mayerthorpe Mayor Janet Jabush and former AUMA President and City of Brooks Mayor Barry Morishita. This is Municipal Affairs. Janet, Barry, thank you so much for doing this. Greatly appreciate it.
Great to be here, Chris.
Yeah, good to see you again, Chris.
Thank you so much. Just want to make sure that everyone can hear you. I want to start off the top with you, Mayor Jabush. If you don't mind, Bill 20 was introduced last week by Minister of Municipal Affairs, Rick McIver. Your initial thoughts on the bill after about 4 days now of it being out in the public. What were your initial thoughts?
You mean beyond? Oh my God.
Yes, beyond, oh my God. What was your initial thoughts to Bill 20?
It's an absolute affront to the democratic process, first and foremost. It smacks of authoritarianism, but I mean, we've seen a couple of those instances from this UCP government already. And I'm left wondering, I know that initially lots of these things are only going to impact the two major cities, Edmonton and Calgary, but us little guys can't help but be caught in the fallout. The fallout's going to hit us eventually. It may not be today or tomorrow, but the fallout will come to all of us. This should scare the hell out of everybody, not just municipal politicians. It should scare the hell out of the general public.
What about yourself, Barry, as the former president of AUMA and also the former mayor of the city of Brooks? I'm assuming you've had a chance to look this bill over. What was your initial thoughts?
Well, it made me mad, like totally mad. It's, legislation shouldn't be built to be coercive or bullying or discriminating, which is exactly what some of the provisions of this bill are. They're meant to be to intimidate people. They're meant to, as much as they talk about wanting people to be free and wanting everyone to be able to have their own say, this in fact pushes people into a laneway. And the warning is clear. If you step out of it and we don't like it, we're going to punt you. If you make a rule and we don't like it, we're going to punt that too. And, we're going to do it in the name of public good, which they know nothing about because they're violating every ethical, every legislative, every democratic principle that this country was founded on and that Western democracies have thrived on. So it's very disappointing to see this tact. And I'm really disappointed with the Municipal Affairs Minister who says, well, we won't do it. Then don't put it in the books. There are plenty of rules that allow for the removal of elected officials at a local level. They've served us well. There's a process, a judicial appeal process. This is disturbing, and that's as much as you can say about the general attitude of it.
I want to start by talking about one of the big things that came from this bill, and that is the introduction of political parties into the local governance sphere. They are doing a trial run, as the minister said last week, in Edmonton and Calgary. This means that rural municipalities and some of the more mid-sized cities and smaller urban cities and towns and villages and even summer villages will not be seeing the introduction of political parties until potentially the next election in 2032-31, whenever that next election is. Mayor Jabush, I've got to ask, are you concerned that while it's just a test run right now, that it could potentially spark a debate even prior to that following election, and you might see political parties enter into Mayerthorpe or even smaller communities this coming municipal election?
It already has, Chris. They're organizing in places like Sylvan Lake. There's been some nebulous things going on in other small communities, but Sylvan Lake's got literature out there, little come join us as we talk about organizing the Sylvan Lake Conservative or whatever the heck it's called. It's happening already. Sylvan Lake's not huge. I mean, certainly bigger than Mayerthorpe, but Sylvan Lake is still a town. It's happening already, Chris. And yeah, do I live in the heart of rural Alberta. I mean, this the ground grows blue things where I live because it's that conservative out here. I'm not naive enough to think that somebody's not going to come tap me on the shoulder and say, so what color is your political stripe? It's coming. Doesn't matter how small my town, it's coming. And I know it is. I'm not that naive.
As former president of the AUMA, Barry, political parties isn't something new that has been floated around, but it's actually this premier and this minister of municipal affairs who's actually taking the step to actually introduce them. During your time as AUMA president, which is now, for those who are listening, called Alberta Municipalities, so it is an offshoot of what AUMA used to be, had you seen a premier or a minister of municipal affairs who has taken the sort of lexicon of what people want in this province and actually gone in the complete different path in some sense? Because 70% of people do not want political parties, but here we are talking about political parties at the municipal level. Have you ever seen a premier or a minister of municipal affairs go against the will of the people in this type of fashion?
Yeah, I mean, actually, if you want to look, the last LAEA changes under the UCP government, there was a survey done, a broad survey across the province, and the legislation they brought in surrounding spending and limits and third parties and things, they went completely the opposite direction. So it is a benchmark, a trait of this government. I think they've just taken it to the point now where, they didn't get what they wanted in the first round, and now they are going to use more measures to try and get what they want in the second round. And that is, quite frankly, they want people that think like them to be in municipal power. You destroy the fabric of what local elections are supposed to be, what local representation means. You get rid of diversity, a diversity of opinions. You completely throw out the idea that consensus building is a useful tool for governance. And what you do is you come down to these, I'm on this side of the fence, I'm on that side of the fence, based on, things like the no tax party, or, what if Calgary gets the no new Saddle Dome party? Or what if they, like all of these things ruin the opportunities for communities to build themselves. And yes, we have seen this. It's now in 2 successive terms. They went a certain distance last time, didn't work as well as they think. I would argue that I think we have a broad diversity of opinion. If you want to split us up left, right, and center, I think we have a broad representation in nearly every council. And it works, but it didn't work for them. People are speaking out about issues in their community that run against the current government's policy, and it's not good. It only comes to show, Chris, imagine if an NDP government was in power right now and they did exactly the same thing. You can hear the hue and cry from every corner of the province. You can hear Danielle Smith preaching about they're trying to control us and tell us what to do and take away our initiative at a local level. It's simply about getting what they want. And if you don't think like me, you're not going to get it. And it's just, you can't cut it any other way.
Can I play a little? Okay, I'll agree to disagree for a second here because I want to play a little bit of devil's advocate with both of you, if you don't mind. They're doing this because they want what they want. And hypothetically, they got elected in the last election. They have the right to do what they want governance-wise, and they can change the rules as they wish because they are the majority in the Legislative Assembly. How do you say that they're doing what they want to get what they want when they got elected to do what they want to do?
Well, Chris, I'll give you a good example. Last election, the UCP said that the NDP didn't campaign on a carbon levy in the 2015 election. They made that loud and clear. You didn't do it. You didn't have the mandate from the people, so therefore you can't do it. They talk to Justin Trudeau. They constantly talk about the federal government. Don't get me wrong, the federal government has some problems with municipalities as well that I take a lot of offense in as well. But the fact is that they said they didn't campaign on this. They didn't campaign on this. Well, UCP, you did not campaign on this. You did not once in a stop anywhere. And I ran in Danielle Smith's riding, so I know in those debates, we did not talk about her initiative to arbitrarily have cabinet behind closed doors remove a sitting elected official for the public good. We have processes. I never once heard her say that she was going to introduce legislation that they would be allowed to repeal any, every, or all of the bylaws in Medicine Hat, Brooks, Dutchess, Bazzano, Bow Island, Red Cliff. It doesn't matter. She didn't say that. Didn't hear her once say that. So for her to say that she was elected on this, she was not. Any more than she was elected on the pension or the police force or any of those issues. She wasn't, and it's disingenuous for her to assume she has a mandate to do those things. She certainly has authority, and that's the reason that we have certain checks and balances, why we allow the judiciary in part of these issues. She's removing the judiciary from this legislation, the ability to deal with these things in a proper way, and that is straight out, you know, it's what you'd expect from a fascist government, what you'd expect from a dictatorship, what you'd accept from somebody that a democracy doesn't exist, and it's a slippery slope.
Okay, Mayor Jabush, I've got to ask you, because Barry brings up a good point that while the UCP did not campaign on this, one of the things that you hear often from the premier or even the minister is we need to keep municipal politicians honest. What they campaign on is what they're going to do, and be more forthright with the voters, because traditionally, and I'll be the first to admit, and I say this all the time on the show, traditionally municipal politics is not something that people look for a platform from their elected officials or the candidates. They're just looking at, oh, I know Janet, so I'm going to vote for Janet, or I know Barry, so I'm going to vote for Barry. This is going to put a platform in place and say, this is what I'm going to run on. Why is that such a bad idea to make municipal politicians more accountable during that campaign period?
The long and the short of that is, when people in my town get up in the morning, they want to know that when they turn their tap on, they can get water to make coffee. They want to know that when they flush their toilet, the things that are in their toilet are going somewhere. They don't care what color my political stripe is. They care that their garbage is going to get picked up. They care that their snow is going to get plowed, and they care that their water is going to turn on when they turn the tap on. You know, every now and then do you get somebody who gets in your face about, you know, the color of your political stripe? Sure. But by and large, they don't care. They want to know that the things that affect them on a daily basis in the town in which, or the city or whatever in which they choose to live, they want to know that those things, that those services and the recreational facilities and all, they want to know that those things are going to run, that they're going to have access to all that stuff. In the end, if I went to them and said, oh yeah, we can definitely make sure the arena is open, you know, a weekend earlier every season so we can accommodate whatever. Oh, by the way, I'm a centrist. They're not going to care. They want to know that I'm listening to them, and that I will take, you know, an earlier open date on the arena to my council. That's what they care about. They don't care about my political stripe. And you know what? I probably proved that when I ran in the provincial election last year. I'm still here. I didn't have anybody come up to me and go, now we know who you are. Don't count on getting elected. Nobody said any of that stuff. It just, here, boots on the ground in my town, it doesn't matter. They want to know that the things that they expect to happen every day are going to happen.
Do you feel?
See, the problem, just Chris, if I could, if you don't mind, sorry. The problem with bringing parties in is that it speaks to the reason you run and how you get elected. So we know, for instance, that in the provincial level and the federal level, if you want to run and win, you pick a side, you follow the rule. Uh, God forbid that you ever step out of line because you lose your cabinet job, you lose your nomination, you get kicked out of the party. Fair enough. So, when it comes to building solutions for local communities, and you are bound, for instance, by a party platform, and if you violate that platform or the leadership of that party or whatever, however that works, then you can effectively say you're not going to be a candidate anymore. And that's the problem. You see, you're not governed and you're not influenced by the right things. You should be influenced by what your community needs to be successful, how you can improve quality of life, how you can make your community affordable at the local level, not by whether you are going to get a nomination next time for the party that you think is going to win. That should be the last consideration. That's why municipal politics is the best level of politics, because that other perspective isn't there. It's not in your face. And the UCP want to put it in your face because that's how they want the decisions. They believe that if we're a relatively conservative province, then we'll always, regardless of what their ideas are, we'll just elect conservative people at every level. And that's what they want. They don't want diversity of opinion. They don't want solutions. They want their way. And it's unfortunate. That being said, there's not all, there's a few good things in here. But the effort, the reason for Bill 20 is the horrible part. The reason they're putting it in is just horrible.
We're going to talk about some of the good things here, and I'm assuming that's going to be a short conversation in the few minutes, but I want to talk about one area that we've sort of skirted around a bit, but I want to talk about it, and that is cabinet having the unilateral decision-making ability to potentially overturn and amend a municipal bylaw. Now, I have sat down with many municipal leaders across this province, and I hear time and time and time again that people in Edmonton do not know what's going on in my community. People in Edmonton would not be able to make the best decisions for what's going on in Fort McMurray or in Redcliffe, like you said, or even in the smallest summer village of Alberta Beach. But this new law, Bill 20, would allow the cabinet to amend any bylaw that they don't deem fit. From your perspective, Mayor Jabush, how do you now navigate, if this bill does actually become law, which hypothetically it will, how do you navigate making bylaws for your community when you know that someone is going to potentially in Edmonton say it's not in the province's interest, so we're just going to amend it or repeal that bylaw?
Good question, Chris. And you know what the short answer to that is? I just have to keep doing what I know to be the best thing for my community. If I know the bylaw, if I and my council know the bylaw is the best thing for my community, we'll forge ahead. And if the province wants to get into the mix with us about it, then let the chips fall where they may. But I refuse to. I hate to use the term govern because I still don't think of myself as a politician, but I refuse to govern from a place of fear, from a place of being afraid that the province could come in and undo the things that we're doing, from a place where the province could come in and relieve me of my responsibility as the mayor. Hey man, if you want my job, come get it, but I won't operate from a position of fear. I can't. It will literally paralyze my council if we operate from a position of fear. It will literally paralyze us.
But there are municipal leaders out there, sorry, and we want to just keep on this train of thought here for a second. There are municipal leaders out there right now who are afraid to speak up. During a press conference today that President Tyler Gandam of Alberta Municipalities said there are municipal leaders who are already feeling threatened about their job because they're afraid to speak out because of this new bill that could potentially oust them by a secret backroom, using the words of President Gandam here, backroom decision from cabinet. While you say you're not scared for a potential an ouster from the cabinet, you gotta be a little bit though, because you want the best interests. You have the best interest of your community at heart. And if cabinet says no, you don't anymore, we're gonna just turf you. Does that not worry you?
It worries me from the standpoint of who takes over and what will that person do? Will that person kowtow to the provincial government? For me, from a personal standpoint, Chris, doesn't scare me at all, because ultimately the only person I have to be better than is the person I was yesterday. My integrity means everything to me. And if keeping my job as the mayor of the town of Mayerthorpe meant sacrificing my integrity, I wouldn't do it. I'd peace out right now and walk away.
Barry, from your standpoint, cabinet seems to be getting a lot more ability in this bill to do a lot more in the provincial or in the municipal jurisdictions. We often talk about jurisdictions on our show, and this seems to be something that this provincial government wants, is more control over the municipal jurisdiction. Do you think, and as the former president of AUMA, do you think more municipal leaders will just say, if you want it, have it, we'll just cut out in peace and let the next person take a run and become the next mayor or the next councillor for my community, rather than dealing with the headache that could be achieved by this bill?
Absolutely. And I appreciate Janet's attitude, and for the most part, most municipal leaders are going to have that attitude, but it comes to a point where you say, like, if my initiatives are going to be challenged, if my council is going to consider those possibilities, if I want to join the party in 2031, if I want to do that, like, why are, there's method to this. Like, it's follow how the decisions will happen. This will result in a deterioration of the quality of people that run, the independent-minded people who actually love their community and think there is no better level of government to initiate change and to make progress. And I don't even know what the right word is, Chris. I've been looking for the right adjective to describe these things, but it's like, do what I say. It's like do what I say and everything will be okay. And don't worry, we won't remove you. Of course they won't remove you, because they're going to elect people that already think like them, or worse, they're going to bully the rest of the group into thinking like them or doing the things that I just, a myriad of possibilities. Imagine tomorrow if a mayor decided, you know what, I'm gonna put 100 photo radars because my community, I did a poll, 82% of my community is tired of this. And some backbench MLA who lives there says, well, we're not going to have that. We don't like photo radar. I don't like photo radar. Or, these decisions are made with a lot of complexity. They're made with a lot of consultation. Unlike this decision, it's the exact opposite, Chris. And so I think it has the potential to lower the quality of people that run, because I think people with integrity that become mayors and councillors in this province do a great job, because they have the best interests of their community at the forefront. And this bill it deteriorates that perspective and makes you worry about other things that you should not have to worry about. I think Tyler's right when he says they're in the back room. That's exactly what cabinet is. When's the last cabinet discussion you ever got to report on? Oh, I've got cabinet, I've got privilege, I've got ministerial privilege, I've got privilege for this. You're never going to hear why publicly. Is that what we want? I don't think so, but they do, because it serves their purpose. And it's disappointing that they're willing to throw away these important democratic principles in order to get their way, rather than convince us they've got the good ideas.
So again, going to play a little bit of devil's advocate with both of you here for a second, but we're going to start with Barry on this one, if you don't mind. When Minister McIver announced these measures, this bill last Thursday, one of the things about this bylaw change in the MGA about a cabinet being able to amend or appeal bylaws, he used the example of Edmonton. Edmonton's masking bylaw after COVID restrictions had been lifted, and he said that cabinet had to go in, or said that the legislature had to basically have a vote and it had to overturn this. And now this is going to simplify and sort of reduce the quote unquote red tape around the sort of process of being able to keep municipalities in their lane and not dealing with health measures while the province's mandate is to deal with health measures. Do you think that's a good argument to have in 2024 to say, because we know better than you, we're going to basically tell you what to do instead of you letting yourself and your own community evolve in a way that you might seem fit?
You know, Chris, so public health being what it was and COVID being what it was, I think that's an extraordinary example. That is a really atypical way to justify the legislation. The fact that, there's a lot of consideration going on back then, whether it was between public health and the cabinet and all of that stuff. So I think that's an atypical example, and it doesn't hold water in this case. What they've retained is just the ability to disrupt or intimidate. That's as simple as this bill is. I think you asked the question right. I think, aren't we afraid? Municipal electeds next time around absolutely are going to be afraid. Not just that they'll be removed, but that, their grant, they won't get their grant approval, that their road won't get paved, that their farmers won't get taken care of in a drought or a flood situation, because the government has chosen this method of governing. That we're not going to tell you, we're not going to listen to you and understand and try to come up with a solution. We already know what we want, and if you're on side, you'll get something. If you're not, we're putting extra tools in place just if you weren't scared enough of losing that you can lose some more things. It is the most anti-democratic thing I've ever seen in my life. I did a scan, just a quick scan before, because I'm mad about this. I'm like totally mad about this. There are no North American jurisdictions that don't use some sort of law and regulation and rule to remove a local elected official that I could find. But I could find a few that do. Hungary arbitrarily can remove local officials. China can. Russia, they can. Is that where we're aligning? Alberta wants to be in the toolbox with those other tools? Like, seriously. It makes no sense. You know what? And then I heard two examples on the way up that I think are worth sharing. So one is the Edmonton Coliseum thing. The Edmonton Rogers Arena and the whole downtown district would have never come together with parties in power in Edmonton, because you would have had parties towing the line on one side or the other. There was a coalition of centrist, left thinkers, right thinkers that brought together a great solution for Edmonton. And look at that downtown district now. Do you think that if you bring parties in, and that's why I brought Calgary up, if you bring parties in, there will never be an arena built in Calgary unless the one party is actually running on, I'm going to spend $1 billion to make sure the Flames stay here. And I can guarantee you there won't be a party running on that. And the last thing I think that's worth considering when it comes to this whole idea of how you do this is that there is very little trust in our democracy today. And it comes down to sound bites and messaging. And if I was the leader of the Alberta Party. I ran in provincial politics. I can tell you that it's worse than everybody thinks it is. And that the only hope for our communities in Alberta to have opportunities for growth and to have a quality of life that will live on for a long time is to leave that local autonomy where it is. We are very much, and I use that, I guess, a little bit kind of longingly, because I'm not anymore, but allows me to speak out a little bit more stridently. It's an attack on quality of life in Alberta. It will be an attack on autonomy in Alberta. It will stop initiatives that bring economic development and services to communities based on their diversity, perspective, and their ambitions. And I think you said it well. The province doesn't know what goes on at that level. It's a centralization process that flies in the face of everything Danielle Smith has ever said. She wanted to decentralize healthcare because local matters. Those things matter. Now she wants to take it back because we don't. It has nothing to do with what she believes. It has to do with what she wants. And she wants control. She doesn't want anybody telling her she's doing anything wrong. And she sees strength from bigger centers to start with, and it'll just go down the line. It will deteriorate the process. I have no doubt about that whatsoever.
After Bill 20 was introduced last week, as you can imagine, as someone who talks to a lot of municipal leaders across this province, my inbox on social media was flooded with different municipal leaders from both rural leaders and even urban leaders. And there was one, and I'm not going to mention her because I'm not sure if this was on the record or off the record, but she said that what we're seeing here in Bill 20 is basically what Danielle Smith has an issue with Justin Trudeau. Justin Trudeau is coming in and saying what the province can and can't do, and Danielle Smith is upset about this. And now Danielle Smith is telling Mayor Sohi, Mayor Gondek, all the mayors across the province, Mayor Jabush, what they can and can't do. Mayor Jabush, I gotta ask, do you agree with that sentiment that what Danielle Smith is trying to do, Premier Smith, I should say, Premier Smith is trying to do, along with the Minister McIver, is similar or akin to what Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister Trudeau, is doing with the provinces right now?
1000%. It is the height of hypocrisy. I don't think I've seen hypocrisy better demonstrated in recent memory than this particular example. Absolutely everything she hammers on the federal government for is exactly what she's doing to the local governments in this province. Exactly what she's doing them. And if I could, I want to go back to, you mentioned the mask mandate thing. What people aren't talking about with that mask mandate and McIver using that as an example is Jason Kenney forced that on the municipalities. They were standing back like this doing nothing, and they basically said, y'all make your decisions locally, do what you got to do. We were all crying, begging for some sort of direction from the province then, and we got nothing. So using that as an example is one of the single most disingenuous things I have ever heard from Rick McIver in all of the years that I've watched him as a political animal. It's one of the most disingenuous things I've ever heard him say. But yes, hypocrisy, the height of hypocrisy, for sure.
And Chris, this is the problem with the provincial and federal. So the federal rules that they're considering around the new infrastructure funding for municipalities makes me mad too, because they want to attach strings on local autonomy. They want to say, you'll get money only if you do this. You'll get money only if you do that, based on what that fund was for, which was for local communities to decide what the best investments are to be made. So I take offense with that, and I'm actually on Danielle Smith's side when it comes to the federal government interfering with municipal decisions. Except now she does, to your point about hypocrisy, now she's doing the same thing. So again, it doesn't make sense, and it's political stunt stuff. It's not practical governance. It's not good for Alberta at all.
The last thing I want to talk about before we turn to the good in this bill, and that is the dark money that is going to be introduced into municipal politics once this is opened up. This proposed legislation, I should note, is allowing now corporations, unions, Alberta corporations only Alberta corporations and Alberta residents to donate up to $5,000 per candidate in this upcoming election. Now, in the previous MGA and the Local Authorities Elections Act, the donations could not start rolling in until the nomination period and someone had actually put their name forward. This has now sort of cleared the slate and said you can basically start raising money whenever you wish. Mayor, I've got to start with you because I see Barry is just taking a bit of a break here for a second. I'm assuming to plug in some power, but are you concerned with the introduction of this new amendment to allow more money to flow into municipal politics, that even smaller communities like yours, you as mayor will have to raise significantly more than you have probably ever had to in the past to run an effective campaign?
Yeah, it's a little bit frightening. I mean, like you say, even in a small community like mine, arguably the money's got to come from within the community, but how do you track all of that? Getting down to the nitty gritty of things. How do you track all of that? Again, I live in the heart of rural Alberta. Things grow from the ground blue here because it's that conservative out here. I don't know that there's anybody in my town that would pony up that kind of dough. That said, I mean, even 500 or $1,000 makes a huge difference when you're running a campaign in a small town. I ran in the last provincial election. I know how much the signs cost. It's a little scary. And to know that short of going door knocking, or as I mentioned for my trip to India, going out and to the bottle depot to turn my bottles in to run a campaign, I don't know where that kind of money comes from. I'm not made of money. I'd have to go door knocking and looking for small donations. If somebody in this town decided they wanted to pony up $500 or $1,000 or $2,000 to an opponent who's running against me, I don't know how I combat that.
Barry.
Yeah, it's scary. Probably less so in smaller communities, but places like Spruce Grove and Stony Plain and Grand Prairie and Airdrie and Medicine Hat and God knows Edmonton and Calgary, everybody there ought to be real worried. Real worried.
From your standpoint, Barry, the introduction of the open, I don't want to say the sort of open gates attitude towards donations is going to allow more and more people, more and more corporations, more and more unions to donate to individual candidates. The response from the minister during the press conference was, you're going to have to audit, you're going to have to sort of announce who your donors are at the end of the year, so people are going to be aware who is donating to each and every one of these campaigns. Is it just not leveling the playing field to allow more corporations and more unions to donate to campaigns that traditionally have been doing it through third-party advertisers?
Yeah, and I think that funding it gets a little bit complex. So we had it before, and then they changed it, and there's no tax credits either. That's a bit of it. This is all a long issue. So I don't disagree with the ability that that unions and businesses should have some ability to participate in a transparent way. I haven't seen the regulations around the 5,000. I understand that the initial is it's 5,000 per municipality that they can donate, I think, so they can spread $5,000 around in one municipality. I don't know if that's a ward in the city of Calgary. I mean, the rules make a difference, because they did lower the PAC funding. They said it was 30,000 before, and now it's 5, and that on its own would seem to be better. But if it's not transparent, if people don't know what's going on beforehand, it's a moot point. So, I think financing is a little bit more complicated than just saying allowing people to participate with their wallets is a good or a bad thing. I think it's the context. It's no different than the whole idea about that you have to be in Alberta to accept to get money. I think those are good rules. So what are the rules going to be, Chris? I'm not going to stomp on them and say it's a bad thing at the outset, because we had it before, and I again, the other things being, people did see a lot of problems. Sometimes you heard about some maybe big city issues, but again, that was about disclosure and transparency. So fix what's wrong. So we'll wait and see with the regulations before but if they screw that up, call me again, and I'll be happy to tell you what's wrong with that too.
So I want to flip a little bit here for a second while we're sticking on sort of some of the other things that have popped up. This provincial government has said red tape reduction is their key priority in this mandate, is to reduce the red tape to make it more business friendly. This bill will add sort of more layers and more red tape to municipalities when it comes to political financing, to running elections. Mayor Jabush, I've got to ask you, looking at this bill, do you see this as a red tape nightmare to sort of have to navigate of what the municipalities will have to require from its potential candidates who are going to potentially put their name on the ballots?
For sure. And the whole red tape thing, they don't care, because they're downloading that onto the municipalities. And we've all figured out that one thing the UCP is good at is downloading onto municipalities. So they're throwing more stuff at us, knowing that it's going to cost us more money and not caring one way or the other, that it's going to cost us more money. It's going to eat up capacity with our staff. It's going to do all of the things that they say they're trying to get rid of. It's just gonna, like you said, Chris, it's gonna add layers and layers to it. But again, that's too bad, so sad. You just have to deal with it, you little municipality, you.
I want to, because I'm cautious of time here, we just hit the 40-minute mark. I want to talk about the good. We've talked about the bad, we've talked about a bit of the ugly, but let's talk about the good here for a second, because we can't go 45 minutes without talking about something good at least once in a 45-minute period. So starting with you, Barry, do you see anything good in this bill, or is it all horrible, bad, and ugly?
Well, and just quickly on the last point you brought it up, like I think businesses want certainty. You don't have certainty with recall, being able to remove people. That brings uncertainty, and that's not good for business, period. So I think that's, again, a hypocritical statement to make, generally speaking. Okay, what's good in it? I think there's a couple of things that are good in it. I think, lowering the contributions to PACs from 30 to 5 is good. Generally. However, the regulation that follows the enable it still has to be discerned, and hopefully a good thing. I think we should be trying to remove money from politics, not add, generally. The 5,000, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I think people have a right to participate. How we get them to participate is another thing. So I think opening the door to a reasonable conversation about that isn't a bad thing. But I would, again, kind of fall back on the idea that, less is more. And that's, pouring more money doesn't necessarily mean a better result. I think the self-financing thing that's returned is a good thing. I think because you can now self-finance your campaigns again. You could do that before. I never took donations, I don't believe, and then I had an acclamation. So I think that's a good thing, because I think if you want to self-finance and you don't want to fundraise, and there's a limit, I think they've got a $10,000 limit on that, if that's within your wheelhouse. I think that's a good thing. I think it keeps small races small and you don't have to worry about it. So I think that's a good thing. I thought there was one more thing that I didn't mind about it, but I'm trying to remember what it is, actually.
While you're trying to remember it, I'll throw it over to Mayor Jabush for a second. For you, did you see anything good in this, or is it all bad and ugly and it's just something you just don't want to go near with a 10-foot pole?
If I'm being perfectly honest, I was so outraged by the things that were blatantly obvious at the beginning when they first announced this legislation. I was so outraged that all I could see was red, and literally all I could see was the bad stuff. Now, having listened to Barry, I would concur with the things that he's found that he thinks have the potential to be good. But again, as Barry so correctly points out, the devil is in the details. The regulations around all of this stuff that's got to do with Bill 20 and Bill 18, for that matter, the devil's in the details. What are the regulations? What does all of that stuff look like? I mean, there's no way to cut it and have it come out good that the province can now just dive in and remove a count. I mean, they could do that before. Danielle Larrivee in 20, whatever it was, 17, removed 3 councillors in the county of Thorhild. Like, within her, she was the minister of municipal, she could do that. The lieutenant governor has powers that allow them to remove a municipal councillor. As far as bylaws are concerned, that's what the courts are for. If somebody doesn't like a bylaw, you can challenge it through legal channels. Like, it just, yeah, there's too much that makes me mad for me to not just see red when I think about Bill 20 in its entirety. Barry, my hat is off to you for being able to be calm enough to find a couple of things that were kind of maybe sort of okay.
So before
I don't think I was calm when I found them. I think, they just pulled up. I don't think I've been calm since the introduction of Bill 20.
The one part that I was hoping that someone would mention, but you didn't, but I want to get you both on the record here for a second, because this new bill will allow municipalities the ability, if it's passed, to request background checks, police background checks on potential candidates. We saw here in Calgary where a councillor had an inappropriate past, there were allegations of inappropriate conduct, and the police, which he was working for at the time, so for those who are wondering, Ward 4 Councillor Sean Chu, didn't disclose this information prior to putting his name on the ballot. In the last election, it came out during this past election, and this bill would allow municipalities to request a police background check from any potential candidates. Do you see this as a good thing? Or is this a layer of bureaucracy of stopping people from actually putting their name forward? Because a police background check, I'm assuming we've all done them. You can go and get a $25 police background check from your local RCMP detachment or police detachment, and they can be extensive, or they can just say, we've done a check and there doesn't seem to be anything that is inappropriate. Is this a good first step to sort of having people's backgrounds transparent during an election, or is this an overreach, would you say? Who wants to take that first?
I don't know if it's an overreach in the sense that, unless you're convicted or you're found guilty of you can be removed anyway, right?
Yeah.
There's provisions in the MGA right now that if you're convicted of certain crimes or all kinds of things, you can be removed anyway. So I think the idea that that a municipality could do that in advance before they are officially received as a nominee. I mean, if that stuff is in their background, they shouldn't be allowed to run. So I don't necessarily see that as overreach. I think, though, that there are better solutions for that, Chris, overall in terms of the long term. And back when our board determined, the AUMA board determined, they wanted training, pre-training. You got to take 25-hour course to serve booze in the province of Alberta. I got mine. I don't have it now, but I had it for quite a while. 25 hours of spending online to understand the important things about serving liquor to Albertans. But you don't have to do that when you become a councillor. Is it unreasonable? We asked for some training prior. We asked for a third-party arbitration when it comes to code of conduct issues, so they weren't political. There are initiatives that will improve transparency, will improve democracy. They've just not chosen those. They've chosen the route of, I'm going to tell you that's what it is. But really what it is me grabbing municipalities around the throat and choking them until they say, okay, I will do what you say. That's even those good things, I admit those are good things, good initiatives, they should move forward. But overall, that's the problem. Those other checks, I don't disagree with that ability. I think, anything that makes a councillor or an elected official more open, more transparent, more communicative, more knowledgeable about his job, or his or her job, that's a great thing.
Can I then challenge you on that for a second? Because sure. You say being more open and being more honest, which is great. Well, a political party would do that, because you're now putting a label on yourself saying this is how I support, and this is who I support, and this is the party I support, and these are the measures I support. If you don't do that, then you're not being open about who you truly are, aren't you? I'm just sort of, I'm trying to.
You know what? No, Chris, you're not wrong there, because you're going to know what they do for 4 years in advance. And I'm just saying that is not the right way to govern. Okay. It's certainly not the right way to govern locally. It's not the right way to govern provincially or federally. Look what is going on. If you want any more illustrations of how it doesn't work, watch the parties vote regardless. So while you're right, Chris, there's a transparency that says no matter what, I am not building a fire hall. Our party ran no new fire hall. Not going to run on it. So you know what's going to happen. Even in light of new evidence that comes across, like science or data-driven evidence, they're still going to vote that way. That's the problem. We should be electing people who think clearly, who are considerate, who are knowledgeable, who are humble about their ability to lead their community, and then let them make decisions in the light, and then allow people that live there to decide whether they're electable again or not. I have every elected official that I've ever worked with, including myself. We make mistakes. We make governance mistakes. We make decision mistakes, but we do them in the light, and we do them with good intention. Parties will allow you to make mistakes without retribution. In fact, you'll be rewarded when you make mistakes, because you'll get to run for them again. And that is not success. That is not progress.
Final word on this before I go to my last question. Janet, do you have anything to add to that before I turn to my last question for both of you?
No, I think Barry covered it pretty well. It's yeah. I don't Barry hit the nail on the head with that one, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start with you on my very last question, and it's an important one. Municipal governance, municipal politics is not a sexy type of politics. There is an apathy across this province when it comes to what's going on at the local town hall, the local city hall. Unless there's a controversial issue, traditionally things fly under the radar. This bill, you are both politically minded, you are both from the municipal sector, so you both understand what this bill means. If I go talk to 100 people in rural Alberta or even downtown Calgary, they would not know what Bill 20 is or what it means for municipalities. Are municipal leaders taking this out of context, or is this something that more and more Albertans should be worried about?
100% more Albertans should be worried about this. At this point, I don't know how my council feels about Bill 20, but you can bet I'm going to find out. And if they're as terrified of it as they should be, I'm going to encourage them when you're having those coffee shop conversations. If you bump into your neighbor at Tim Hortons, just start a conversation. Say, so have you heard about Bill 20? What do you know about Bill 20? Ask them. And if they don't know about it, enlighten them, encourage them to read. I'm not going to stop talking. Barry knows this about me. And when I get a burr under my saddle, I don't stop. I'm not going to stop talking about this. Anybody that will stand still long enough for me to have a conversation with them about Bill 20, I'm going to have that conversation. I'm going to comment on social media posts. I'm going to get on LinkedIn and say what I think on LinkedIn. I'm going to do all of those things. And you can bloody well bet the next time I'm face to face with Rick McIver, he's not getting a hug from me. He's going to get a poke in the eye because him and I are going to have a really ugly conversation and we may not be friends on the other side of it. Right now, I can call us friends. On the other side of that conversation, that may not be the case. I am not a happy camper, and more Albertans should be really, really, really terrified of what this bill means.
Barry, final word to you. Change is often a hard thing to overcome. This seems to be a big change that the province wants to mandate to municipalities. Do you think the average resident, do you think Albertans are worried about this bill, or do you think it's just municipal leaders who are worried about this bill?
I think there are some Albertans that are worried about it, but they're the watchers and the ones that pay attention to how governments work. And I have sympathy for a lot of people that are busy and the nuances of what's going on don't always appeal, and they don't always have time. The problem is that I think municipal leaders across this province, and I'll give a shout out to Tyler on this. They're actually exploring legal options. I think they called a spade today in the press conference. I mean, I think other leaders have to. I think whether it's quit muting the conversation about these things. These will become important because people follow local leaders as well. And we can, talk about the low participation rate at the vote and all those kinds of things. But generally speaking, I tell you, I was in a jurisdiction of 15,000 people. There were very few people who didn't know who the mayor and the council was and the last decision we made. They don't vote because, I don't know, you have to do study on that. I'm not sure why, but they pay attention to their local decision makers. And if local decision makers on this one, they have to be loud and clear about their opposition to this type of legislation. It just runs in the face of democracy. That means my vote means nothing because I'm bringing this to make municipal, as Rick McIver said, well, this allows us to make sure we're holding councillors to be transparent and more accountable, except they aren't. Rick can say, well, if we do this decision, we'll be held accountable. No, you won't, because it isn't going to be a provincial election issue ever, the removal of one councillor or one mayor. it's a removal of basic democratic rights. I think every municipal leader, every elected official now has to rise up and voice their opinion, tell their constituents what's going on, be loud and proud of understand why local decisions work, local government works the best, and fight like hell to preserve it. And then maybe you have a chance. You've got, and be prepared. Try it, make sure it's an issue in the 2027 campaign. That's what the challenge is for leaders. Soft talk and we have to chat and all of that I'm disappointed talk doesn't work with this kind of legislation. That works when you lose a couple $1 million in a grant. I'm disappointed. That happens when the other guy's road gets picked when yours don't. But when your ability to vote for the person you want and to have that elected official stand up for you across this province is taken away, that's worth fighting for. And I really encourage all the elected officials, 3,000 of them or whatever they are across the province, to fight like hell and get this changed.
Mayor Jabush, Barry, I want to thank you both so much for sitting down over the last, I said 45 minutes, and now we're almost at the hour mark. So thank you so much for taking an hour out of your afternoon and doing this. It's always a pleasure. For those who are listening and watching this today or even at a later date, please, if you don't mind, hit that subscribe button now. Stay in the loop with all our diverse content, covering everything from here on the municipal affairs to our interviews with municipal leaders from across Canada on the cross-border interviews, or even our eye-opening exploration of the political trenches in the Political Trenches Local Government at Work. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and as always, just keep talking.